And we figured out at Brunswick back in like when I was there in 2003 and 4 about comparing, I think I talked about this, comparing bowling lanes to seats on an airplane.
Right. Yeah, we did talk
Right.
about that a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
Same fixed costs. You know, you're flying from Los Angeles to New York City, and you got
Right.
200 seats, and the costs are fixed. You know, you have your payroll costs, your fuel costs, and so if you only sell 100 of those seats and you've got 2 weeks to go, what do you do?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tom, for coming on today. For anyone who had the pleasure of meeting you, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing these days.
Yeah, well, today I own 2 bowling centers, one in Indianapolis Highway Lanes and another one in South Bend, Chippewa. And before that, I worked for Brunswick for 26 years. I started when I was in college, and my last job there was vice president of operations in charge of 110 centers. And I left there in late 2007, and then bought the 2 centers. And I also do some consulting on market studies and market feasibility studies for new family entertainment centers.
Awesome. So you said you started in college or right after college for Brunswick?
Yeah, I worked for them full time when I was at the University of Arizona.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I did hourly,
you know,
work the desk. What's that?
Okay. Did you always know that it came along, or how did that happen? Like, were you a bowler in high school or in college, and then you knew you wanted to go into bowling, or something that just happened?
No, I just started working there part time, turned into full time. And then when I got my degree from the University of Arizona, I decided to go into their management program. Okay. And, at the time, I think my choices were go to Brunswick, or I think it was Woolworths. You ever heard of the Woolworths department stores?
Yeah, sort of.
So I guess I picked the right one.
Choice. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm one of those guys that started at Brunswick, like bar in the day.
Right. All the way up.
Yeah. Yeah. So I knew how to run a bowling center from the ground up, which helped a lot.
Right. Yeah. I'm sure that translates well to running centers today, and then some of the consulting that you're doing.
Yeah, it does. It really does.
Yeah. And so tell me a little bit more about maybe some of the progression or some of the things you've seen change over time when you were at Brunswick. I know you guys tracked a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot change there.
Yeah. When I first started, it was like 1988, I think. And, it was mostly league bowling, like you've probably heard before. You were 70% league bowling. And then as we, went further, and I went into 2 different jobs inside of Brunswick, managed a couple bowling centers, opened a new one, and then opened a brand new family entertainment center in Edmonton, Canada called Reds, which was 100,000 square feet. And that was Brunswick's first foray into family entertainment. The bowling, the games, the bar, the billiards, entertainment. And, back then, Brunswick saw that, every year league bowling was declining. And so we knew we had to try to do something different. And so you saw the progression of, going from 70% league. Now a lot of centers are less than, 40, 30% league. And so the question was, coming marketing, what do you do? How do you combat league bowling going down and, trying to get open bowling higher? And so it became a different business to run, and we figured out at Brunswick back in like when I was there in 2003 and 4 about comparing, I think I talked about this, comparing bowling lanes to seats on an airplane.
Right. Yeah, we did talk about that a little bit. But yeah, go ahead.
Same fixed costs. You're flying from Los Angeles to New York City, and you got 200 seats, and the costs are fixed. You have your payroll costs, your fuel costs. And so if you only sell 100 of those seats and you've got 2 weeks to go, what do you do?
Right.
You discount.
You discount.
Right. And so we looked at bowling lanes the same way, except we used it in day parts. Okay. We said, you have the slowest day part, which is, Monday through Friday from 9 until noon. And then the afternoon day part, which is maybe a little busier. And then the busiest time was Friday at 5 o'clock until Sunday at 5 o'clock. So you would never discount from Friday at 5 p.m. to Sunday at 5 p.m.
Right.
But then you look at opportunities during the middle of the week, when nobody's in your bowling center, to say, what can you do to drive traffic? And sometimes you do specials like a dollarama or family packages or different things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you're devaluing the game, but I think you're just trying to fill space where you didn't have anything there anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And
yeah.
And an empty lane is like, it's a marketing, what do you call it? It's something that it's gone. Meaning it wasn't used during those 3 hours, you've lost that opportunity.
Right.
Yeah. And that's kind of, yeah, go ahead.
It's, like you said, it's just an opportunity of an hour that's gone for it. And you're not devaluing it. You're just saying that there's less demand during this time period.
Right. It's all based on supply and demand.
Right.
Okay. And I said back in, 2002 or 3, I was in an MBA class, economics class, and we had to do a project, and I did the project. We went back to 1970 and looked at the number of bowling centers in the United States, and the average price per game back then was 50 cents, meaning the average price in a bowling center, meaning that lot prices might have been higher and some lower. And bowling centers are doing about 11,500 games paid per lane. And then we went and looked up to 2002, and the average price went from 50 cents to $2.60, but the number of games per lane went down to 8,000.
Right.
And so we said, well, we keep raising the price, and people keep using our centers a little less and less.
Right.
And so that's kind of like the economic picture that we looked at to figure out, how do we do specials or do values or family values when we're not that big, and still maintain a healthy price point when we're really busy, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And that's kind of like an economic way of looking at your business.
Right. And so you're saying, so that the total value was flat. It was just the one side was going up the side just as much. Like,
correct. So. Right. Your price increases masked the less number of games being bowled in the center. Okay. And so that's what happened. Price went up, number of games went down, but you still did just as well. Okay. And what you want to try to do is try to get more people in, at a price point where the price is actually staying flat or working up. Okay. And that's just something that, either you get more customers, you get better pricing. Okay. Or you drive more business. And I think, what are the 3 ways to drive business that you told me?
Well, the first is the average ticket is the first. The second is the frequency that they come in per year. And then the third is just new bodies in the door. Those are really the only 3 ways that I've found. If there's more, someone tell me, but that's it that I found.
And I remember a funny story we ran. There was a special that we ran at some of the Brunswick centers, and it was like 2002. It was called Buck and Bowl, and it was like 9 o'clock on a weekday. Okay, it was $1 games, $1 shoes, $1 12-ounce soft drinks, $1 draft beer, and we had some centers that were like full. They had waiting lists everywhere. And so you saw this, and so we rolled it out nationwide. And after about 8 weeks, some centers decided, well, I can go to $1.25 and change the concept from $1 to $1.25. And all of a sudden, they only had, instead of 40 lanes full, they only had 30 lanes. And it showed the price sensitivity of the special.
Right.
And it was very interesting that the smart guys that were full all the time just picked another night and did it at 9 o'clock on a Monday night at the same price, instead of raising the price to see if they could get more. And that just shows the price sensitivity of open bowlers.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll pay $1.
Good point.
But they won't pay $1.50 or $1.25.
Right. Right.
And it was kind of pretty amazing to us, actually, that happened. But it shows that, we kind of learned that people will pay different prices to bowl at different times. And that's something else you have to look at. There's different categories of open bowlers. Some people don't care what they pay. Okay. Some people just pay whatever the price is on the board. Some people will only come in if there's a special. Okay. And so you almost try to categorize the groups of open bowlers as to how you market your business, which is quite a different way of looking at things.
Right. Now, when you did that, how would you price things? Is all that done calculated the POS, or they know during these time blocks, or certain prices, or how do they figure that out?
Yeah, it was POS locked in per time. Okay. Like a Wednesday at 9 o'clock at night, the POS was locked in at $1 per game. That's special.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay. And then when it was over 11 or 12, it went back. And
Nice.
so you
Okay.
basically put the people at the counter, that's all they could do is ring that up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that
Yeah.
would be confusing.
It would be, but
Yeah.
it's and that's one of the things about marketing and bowling center, many different opportunities of what you want to do.
Mhm.
And I think, when you went from being 75% full with leagues, you really didn't have to market.
Right.
Now you have to,
Yeah.
and it's a different game.
Absolutely. That's our right. That's our whole existence.
Right.
So,
Correct.
yeah. So what actually we'll jump into that because that's a question that's I've been trying to figure out, and I feel like you'd be a great person to answer it. Is what is the average percentage spend that you saw for centers for marketing? What's the band, or obviously depends on how aggressive they want to grow. But a lot of them were spending for marketing. I know what I've seen, but here's what you saw
I
on
would,
that end.
I at Brunswick, when we had 110 centers, we spent about 4% of our gross revenue in marketing.
Okay. Yeah, it's
And
right around it. Yeah.
yeah, and we were doing $250 million in sales in 100 centers.
Right.
And so 4% of that, some centers spent less, some centers spent more. I would say today, anywhere from 4 to 6% you should spend, but it should be targeted.
Absolutely.
Meaning, what's your focus? Are you focusing on families? Are you focusing on adult leagues? Are you focusing on birthday parties? Are you focusing on cosmic bowling? Okay. I mean, and that is one thing that the message has to be consistent, and you have to spend towards that focus.
Right.
Yeah. And, I mean, and I've seen centers that don't spend hardly anything on marketing, and they get in trouble because they don't think they have to,
Right.
and that's not the answer. Yeah.
Right.
And so, some people, if they're doing $2 million in revenue and they're saying, well, 4%, that's $80,000 a year in marketing. That's a lot. And you may say it may be a lot, but you still want to drive your $2 million business to 2,122. So it's the right thing to do to keep.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and there's, the other way to look at it is how aggressive you want to be is kind of where you would shift that number up and down. If you're really aggressive, you'd be more like 4 or 5 or 6, 7, 8%. The other way I look at it is it's almost like that old saying, like dress for the job you want, not the job you have. Spend marketing at a rate of the size of the revenue you want, not the revenue you have. Same philosophy.
Correct. Yeah, that's great. I mean, because your marketing is going to drive your revenue. Okay.
Right.
And, and the thing is that you've got to be able to have enough guts to spend that money, especially in the seasonal business of the bowling center in the Midwest, where, you do all your revenue from September until April, and then May, June, July, and August, it's so slow. Well, a lot of times in my centers, we spend on the majority of our marketing in May, June, July, August to drive people in because we have such lane availability.
Right.
Okay. And people think, well, that people aren't going to come in because the weather's nice, but you can still do it. I mean, you can still, drive people into your center through different promotions. Yep. Okay. And I think that's something that you look back at your lane availability and say, if I'm really busy from December, January, February, and March, why would I spend that much money in marketing?
Right.
Because my lane availability is so small. But then when you get into May, June, July, and August, and you can blow a cannon through your bowling center, like, maybe I should spend a lot more money on marketing.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
But a lot of centers lose money in the summertime and don't want to do that because summers are so tough financially. So it's a catch-22.
It is. Really. Yeah, it is. But then, there's a whole other factor we haven't talked about yet that changes the dynamics of the business is the food and beverage side, because that tends to flatten it out, and it has a different type of capacity. You only have so many bowling lanes, but you can sell all the beers you want as long as you have space for them to stand around. It changes it completely.
Right, and that's the other thing. We always say people at work, they're a captive audience. They're not going anywhere. Okay, and so when they're a captive audience, food and beverage becomes a huge part of this. I mean, in a bowling center, they're in there an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. In a family entertainment center, they're 2 or 3 hours. And so your job is to try to get them, to spend buy pizza or soft drinks for the kids or things like that, because that is a big part of it today. and that's, that's one thing that it all goes going back to driving traffic. Because the more traffic you drive, and maybe it's at a lower price of a different day part, you're going to increase in food and beverage.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where you see a lot of it, because you see, it's interesting with people, you would do a promotion where bowling is inexpensive. Okay. But they only have $20 to $25 to spend. So they get into like on Wednesday nights at one of my centers, we have $8 all you can bowl. For 2 hours of bowling and shoes, it's $8. Okay, which we think is pretty good. You get 30, 40 people to show up, but they all spend money buying beer and food because they had 20 bucks in their pocket and they only had to spend 8 to bowl.
Right.
And so that's kind of how you look at that, is you almost use bowling as a loss leader to drive.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And you do. And the thing is, that's a strategy that you try, but Wednesday night at 9 o'clock at night, we're doing it when we're not busy.
Right.
And that's the thing. I've seen centers run quarter mania. 25-cent bowl, the bar does an extra $500 because they ran quarter mania. And so you're using bowling, which really there's no cost to it because your overhead's there, to drive a tremendous amount of food and beverage and bar sales.
Yeah. If you have that food and beverage side, if you don't have it, then I could see the argument of how you're cheap.
Right.
Have that to offset.
Right. Yeah. And then, and it all builds together.
Yeah. Yeah. It from the market perspective, I like concentric circles, and you get more circles that are grouped around that, different items that you have, so that you can draw one person in for bowling or another person in for the bar, another in for laser tag. The more circles you have, the bigger your pool, but then they end up crossing the line and going to the other.
Right. And the concentric circles are why family entertainment centers are so good nowadays, because you have the circles, you have 4 businesses inside of one roof. You've got laser tag, you've got bowling, you've got arcade, you've got bar, you've got a restaurant. So you have the 5 circles, which you say are going together. And that's what people want. It's kind of a one-stop shop. Right. And that's why they're so popular nowadays. Yeah. And they're also, what would somebody say, a wallet emptying experience. Because
it's a what?
A wallet emptying experience, because the kids that give me $20 more for the games, then you got to pay $100 for bowling, and then you got to go to get a beer, and then pretty soon you're like, well, I just spent $200 or $300.
Right, exactly.
But that's how it works.
Right,
that's a good thing for the proprietor.
Right, it's an efficient business.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, because we talked a little bit about the past. Let's talk about now what's working. Tell me a little bit about what you're seeing work in your centers, as far as, FEC or what else you're seeing it work for you today.
And just, I have the 2 traditional centers, and what's working today is our focus on family. Okay. We do a lot of family value packages. We do the birthday party packages. Kids Bowl Free is a tremendous program because it's all family oriented. And so when you're doing your marketing, if you got a lot of Kids Bowl Free and you have, a good birthday party program, okay, and you're marketing a family package or family values to families, it all kind of ties together. Okay. And so in the 2 traditional centers, that's a big thing to us, because when theaters, before they closed with COVID, you go to a movie with 2 kids and 2 adults, and you couldn't get in there for less than probably $60. And we can run a family special where you get 2 hours of bowling and a pizza and a pitcher of soda for like $59.95. And people appreciate that, especially because your cost in that is the cost of the pizza and the pitcher of soda, which is like what, $6 maybe?
Right.
And so, but the customer doesn't see that. Okay. But and so, we do a lot of just, marketing to families, because it's a good value to them. Okay. And I think that's important today, especially lately with inflation running 8%. And, even you go to a fast food place, you see the prices and you're like, oh my.
Right.
And so you make it a little more
prices are up.
But we don't, like I said, from, Sunday or from Friday from 5 p.m. till Sunday 4 or 5, we charge full price. It's, and so, and in the FEC business, I write market studies for that. And we see arcade part of the business keeps growing higher and higher and higher in the, how would I say, the amount of revenue it's doing as compared to the other categories.
Yeah.
Used to be arcade would do, arcade and laser tag do 30, 32%. Maybe bowling would do 25, 28%. Well, now we're seeing the arcade do close to 40% of the gross revenue.
Wow.
And so you see that that's taking a bigger bite. People are going into the FECs and spending more money in the arcade than anywhere else, which is very interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's very profitable. Okay. And I think, when we're writing these studies, we see these numbers like this. Bowling's saying about flat, food and beverage goes up a little bit, but the games are going up quite a bit. And it's just interesting to us that people are more interested in going to the arcade and playing those games and maybe winning those redemption toys than anything else inside of the center.
Yeah.
And that's something, I don't know if you've heard that, but something we've seen when we go to do our market analysis of revenues.
I do wonder about that. If it's has to do with maybe technology, people used to playing on their phones, and it's something more a closer crossover. I'm not sure, but yeah, it seems like it's growing a lot.
Yeah, and the family entertainment center business is a great business. I mean, it's one where they say bowling is usually the driver, called the bowling-based family entertainment center. But I mean, if you have top-notch food and beverage, and you have a great arcade with maybe 60 to 80 to 100 games, you're doing extremely well. And the other big drive, whether with COVID, that killed group events. I mean, it killed birthday parties, Christmas parties, bar mitzvahs. Now you see it coming back very strongly.
Yes.
Okay. And
big time.
And they're not afraid to spend money. Okay. The ticket items, they're not afraid to spend on, whether they can go have their meeting in the meeting space and then have some lunch and then go bowling, go play games. So you see that part of the business getting stronger too in the entertainment centers.
Yeah, especially as you see people going virtual. You want to bring the team together, and there's still that need. There's no getting around that need for connection in person, and that's a great place to do it.
Yeah, a lot of people still don't go to the office. Like there's virtual, like this Zoom, and so when they have a party, that's really connecting because they're physically there.
Right.
Okay, and it's something they can do together. Okay, it's the advantage they have there. These FECs is that you have a Christmas party for a big company. Well, you go to a ballroom, banquet room, you eat the dinner, and that's it. You have some drinks. Well, at least with the bowling and entertainment centers, it's interactive, and I think that's the big win for them. Yeah, and bowling centers have had a great run from what I've heard, the last 12 or 15 months, whether it's entertainment centers or regular traditional centers. And I think that has a lot to do with first COVID and people being cooped up. And second, I think movie theaters not being around much anymore give people less choices to go out and do interactive things.
Right.
And I think that has a lot to do with it. Not to say that we haven't done a good job, but there's something driving this. And I mean, what do you see driving that increase in the bowling?
Well, I mean, definitely the ones you mentioned, being cooped up, but one that we don't tend to hear about as much is the survivorship bias. So how many centers didn't make it through COVID, and now those people still got to bowl somewhere. Right. Yeah. So many
and I didn't know
the neighboring one went under.
Right.
What's that?
Do you know the numbers of that?
I don't, but anecdotally, it's pretty decent. Like a 10-20% kind of number, like significant.
Yeah. And that's probably I guess you would say the same thing with restaurants and bars.
Exactly.
Whoever survived, survived the pandemic, came back stronger.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. That does. Yeah.
Yeah. Like for instance, in our town here, we have a bowling center that my good friend Dan Mowry has, and they're one of only one. There's maybe only one other late night place to go now, and before there was 4, and now it's him or one other person or one other bar, and that's it. So where does everyone go? Right.
And with food and beverage, you take advantage of that. I mean, that's the thing. You try to take advantage of that as much as possible. Right. And that's a good thing. I mean, anytime, when we write market studies, the first thing we do, we look at the market as we, draw the 5 mile, 10 mile, 15 mile ring and see who are the competitors,
right.
Who how many lane beds are in that market?
Hmm.
And that's the same thing that's happening to him now, whether it's
Right.
lane beds or whether it's laser tag, whether it's mini golf, And so if there's less of that, then you're going to do much better.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, and I would definitely include bar stools or seats, booths, whatever in
Oh,
that
yeah.
study, because that is, your choice. It's not just, bowling. It's, where we're going to
Right.
go out tonight.
Right. And then you only have so much disposable income,
Mhm.
and so, and that's a good way to look at it.
Mhm.
And you
Yeah.
market to that too.
Right.
You do it,
That.
you could expanded hours of operation or different things like that.
Mhm. Yeah, and
Yeah.
a lot of it is just, at least from what we do, is just painting the picture to the outside person to show them that it's not, the Big Lebowski. It's a nice restaurant and bar where with families to go.
Right.
And once you pick that picture, I call it, you incept that into their mind. It's like, oh, I want to take my son to do that for his
Right.
birthday party, and
Yeah. And
that's the process.
yeah, that's exactly right. And it's funny when, we a long time ago, Brunswick, we had customer service surveys. You survey all the customers, and the scores go to the corporate office, and you get the score for your center. And there were maybe 20 questions, and one of the questions was cleanliness of restrooms.
Mhm.
Now, I didn't know it at the time, but that was rated 10 times more than any other question in the form,
Mm.
because, like you said, when you take your kids somewhere, you want to do something with the family, and you check out the restrooms and they're really clean. Well, you think it's great, but you go into a place,
Right.
and you see all in the restrooms, you're like, oh my God, you're not going to stay in that place,
Right.
But it goes to what you just said, the perception of people and the vision they have when they go into the center,
Right. Absolutely.
what you're talking about.
Right. So, and I've had a theory about that, the way that you take care of your restroom is a good reflection on how you take care of the rest of your center. Like, kind of like the bottom, like the least seen place. It's a good indication of how you take care of the rest of it, whether it's the kitchen or, the ball returns or whatever it is. It's a good indicator.
Yeah, and you're exactly right, because people equate that in their minds too.
Mhm.
They equate it
Right.
to must be a clean kitchen, or must
Mhm.
be the parking lot.
Right.
When you
Exactly.
come into when you come in, you step out of your car, you don't want to be walking through trash to get into the building, because it's the first thing you
Absolutely,
see,
Right.
besides the restroom. And it's like, you better keep the parking lot clean all the time, because it's the first thing a guest is going to see when they get out of their car.
Right.
And that's enough.
Yeah. That's a great point. So is that it cut out?
What's that?
It cut out at that last.
Yeah,
piece.
cut
What
out
did
for a
you say?
second. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we can keep going, since I did only ask you, I want to keep respectful of your time. We're at the
Mhm.
half-hour mark. Let's talk a little bit about where you see things going. So the future, the next, 2-3 years or so, what do you see on the horizon?
From what I've seen just this last 3 or 4 months from people I've talked to in industry, I see league bowling getting stronger. I mean, it's really a weird phenomenon that most of the people I talk to today have more league bowlers than they had last fall.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think people are looking for something to do,
Mhm.
and I think
Mhm.
that's going to continue to be strong. Okay, go out once a week and have fun, have some beers and go bowling. I think people miss that camaraderie, and they miss it a lot during COVID. And now, and so,
Mhm.
people, I started this conversation by saying league bowling's gone down so much in the last 25 years. And
Right.
now I see it coming back. And
Mhm.
and it's coming back in forms of not traditional leagues for us, but people that want to bowl a 12-league fun league.
Right.
Okay, like we
Yeah.
have a beer and pizza league where you pay $20 a week, and you get a pitcher of beer and you get a large pizza, and you bowl 3 games of bowling in league. Well, people eat
Yeah.
that up,
Sounds great.
and so we see that filling up immediately, because
Mhm.
it's short season. It's not going to take 30 weeks, and I also see a lot of adult junior programs doing extremely well. People want to do stuff with their kids,
Right.
and so we ran one last year on a Sunday morning, and it's going to start in January. I had like 12 lanes available. I had 28 lanes. Just kind of said, well, I figured we'll get 12 teams of 2. Well, we just promoted in center, and we did a little bit of online marketing through Facebook and our database, and we ended up with 28 teams of 2. They just
Wow.
kept coming in, and I'm
Yeah.
like, how did this happen? And we were just shocked by it,
Mhm.
but people want to do stuff with their kids.
Right.
And so I see that being big too,
Hmm.
and the other part is getting what other thing you can do for like a Friday or Saturday night cosmic. People, there's different innovations out there to make the show better, to make the lanes glow or flame up or different
Yeah.
things like that. And I see
Right.
that continuing to draw people in, okay,
Yeah.
because it's just a night out. It makes it more fun.
Right.
Yeah.
More of it like an event.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
and some of the like Brunswick Sync, the new scoring, and I'm not sure of AMF Cubica, but now you can order from the lane. Okay, you just
Mhm.
can punch in your order and pay for it right, and then
Yeah.
it's delivered to you. I think that's huge. Okay, because
Hmm.
that's convenience for people. They don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to wait for a server. Okay,
Right.
I think that's big too. So it's all about. But the last thing is you still have to provide great service. That always
Yeah.
that never goes
Right.
away. So
Constant.
say what's coming down the road, you still have to provide great service. But I really think that you're going to see more people joining fun leagues, and you're going to see adult juniors, and you might see a youth program pick up too.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that's really
Yeah.
kind of the way I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great observation. I totally agree, especially on the leagues. A little bit less of the competitive focus and the
Yes.
fun focus. Like you said, the
Yeah.
short leagues. They have one down the street that I always reference because it's a good indication. They call it Average Joe's, which is a drinking league with the bowling problem. And they just
Yeah. There you
joke that
go.
it's all based around drinking, having fun, and it's non-sanctioned, but they pack it out. It's the busiest league we have at the center.
Yeah, and you know why? A couple reasons why, because it's fun, people like it, and two, I'm pretty sure, I don't know the league format, but there's no restrictions. Meaning open mixed. We don't care if it's 5 guys, 4 guys, 3 women. Don't care.
Mhm.
See, the problem was with all of our structured leagues, there were too many rules.
Right.
Oh, I got to have 2 women. Oh, I got to have 1 guy. Oh, I can't do this. Oh, I can't do that. Well, you do the average Joe league, you open it up and just say this is going to be fun. There's going to be a few rules here,
Hmm.
okay? But I think that's a lot to do with it
Yeah.
because people feel more comfortable going, well, we're just here to have fun anyway.
Yeah. Exactly. That's the whole point. Hmm.
And that's the thing. And you know what? I mean, you can do those leagues year round. That's
Right.
the other thing. You don't have to
Right.
stop them in the summertime.
Yeah.
No, I mean
Hmm.
and we had our beer and pizza league, the one in Indianapolis, and it was our biggest drinking night in the bar.
Wow. Right.
We had like 14 teams of these guys, and they would stay till close, and usually that doesn't happen. You
Right.
know, right? Used
During the
to
week. Yeah.
during the
Right.
way it was during. Yeah, it was on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
It
That's the
was
same with
Wednesday.
them. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's their busiest night of the week.
yeah, and I think it's just that, and so it becomes more of a social thing for people. It's
Right.
social, and that's really what they're looking for is just a good 2 or 3 hours of having fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. Okay, so then the only other thing I wanted to ask is what's the biggest challenge you're seeing today at the centers? Staffing, yep.
Staffing,
Mhm.
it's hard. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good way to put it. It's hard. The problem is that there's not enough applicants.
Mhm.
Okay, and we've raised our wages quite a bit.
Mhm.
Okay, I mean, I have no problem. We raised a lot of our pricing in what people pay to bowl and food and beverage, so that we can pay our people more, and we do pay our people more. But it's still very difficult to hire,
Yeah.
and that's the hardest thing for owners and managers and proprietors,
Mhm.
being shorthanded all the time, because
Yeah.
it just leads to a tremendous amount of burnout.
Right.
In the last 12 or 15 months, all these bowling centers are reporting great numbers and everybody's doing great, but nobody looks at the stab you've got killed your people.
Right.
No, I
Yeah.
mean, because it's true. And so down in my center in Indianapolis, we've hired a lot of 16, 17, and 18-year-olds to work
Mhm.
1 or 2 shifts or 3 or 4 shifts a month.
Mhm. Really?
Okay, so you've got a 28 lane center with 33 employees on payroll
Wow.
because
Yeah.
you're doing that just to get through it. Okay,
Right.
and it's a lot of training and it's a lot of work from the management point of view, but at least you're
Mhm.
getting most of your shifts covered.
Yeah.
Okay? And then the problem is when you don't do that, it's hard to manage. I've seen a lot of providers cut back hours of operation, which I don't blame them, because
Yeah.
they just can't like open at 4 o'clock instead of 10 in the morning.
Right.
Okay,
A lot.
because the
Yeah.
and that's the biggest problem is just staffing the centers. And you've probably heard that, but
Mhm.
it's and you can pay them 12, 13, 14, $15 an hour, but it's hard to do,
Yeah.
and it's hard to keep people, and that's the thing. And I'm hoping that it gets a little better, but right now I would say that's the biggest challenge going forward
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
getting good people to run the centers.
That's about 95 or higher percent is the what we hear is staffing right now. Uh,
Right,
mhm,
right. And it's you just got to keep working at it.
mhm.
And that's just the thing. I mean, have your help wanted signs in the center, post some stuff online. You just got to keep working at it. And
Yep.
a lot of it, people that just like that don't need a job, maybe some seniors or some people who stay at home that don't need a job, but just want to go out and work maybe 2 or 3 shifts a week. And
Right.
that is good, because they like the bowling business,
Yeah.
and whether it's restaurants or bars or bowling centers, and the entertainment is facing the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll get better going forward.
It seems to be softening somewhat as unemployment rates rise. It's definitely better,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's still the main struggle. We actually have spent a lot of time helping clients with that because
Mhm.
we can't convince them to marketing more people in the door if they can't even handle what they have now. So we've actually spent a lot of time trying to help fix that problem.
Yeah, that's a wicked thing.
Mhm. Right.
More traffic in your bowling center, but you better have the staff to take care of it.
Yeah, that's usually the
Right.
first question that I ask
Right.
them.
I mean, but and so they have to decide that they have to get the staff to do it. Otherwise,
Mhm.
what you're doing for them is not, I don't know, it's not good.
Makes it
One
worse.
one guy out the back,
Mhm.
because once you drive them in, you got to take care of them.
Right. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
you're exactly right about that.
Mhm. Yeah. So yeah, we spend a lot of that. A lot of it comes down to getting the message out in front of more people. So
Hmm.
there's a lot bigger percentage of people who are willing to make a switch than what people realize. It's actually like 25% of the people are
Hmm.
open to a change. And then it's competing on things that you can win at. Wages are not one of them. You can go to a
Right.
warehouse down the street and start at 22 an hour. That compare that work environment to working at a bowling center. It's night and day. You get your flexibility, it's more fun and laid back. You get some free bowling, maybe discounts on food, and maybe some more growth opportunities. If you can find people who value that more than just the starting wage, then you got some winners.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we do with the younger people, the 6, 8, and
Mm,
17-year-olds. That's exactly what we do. We provide a fun environment for them to work in.
right.
You can go to Arby's and make 14, 15 an hour,
Hmm.
and it won't be
You're
very
not going to
much
like it.
fun.
Exactly.
Or the warehouse, or you can work for us for 11 or $12 an hour, and
Hmm.
we're going to treat you really well. And you know
Hmm.
what? The environment will be better. You'll
Exactly.
enjoy yourself more in your job. And
Right.
I think that's important. That's
Hmm.
very important. I think it was always like that even before we had a hard time hiring people.
Hmm.
It's always been like that. You build your teams on how well you treat people, and how they actually like coming to work,
Right.
and I think that's a big deal. And you've just got to, keep working at it.
Hmm.
And it has a lot to do with your management team and how well
That's the
they
other thing.
train and
Yeah.
treat people.
Hmm.
You got to, with Brunswick, you say one of the 4 things in our mission vision statement. The first one is treat people right,
Hmm.
whether it's customers or your internal customers, your employees.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, if you don't have good retention, there's not anything getting more applications is going to fix. You're just going to lose them
Right.
as fast as they come in the door.
Yeah, and that's the thing, and when we talk about marketing and you're helping people with marketing, just like hiring, you have to focus on the correct thing.
Hmm.
I mean, if you're coming into my center and saying, well, Tom, we want you to drive more birthday party business and more, families and this, well, that's what the marketing is going to drive into the center, and I think that's important when you're talking about marketing is you have to focus on what your 1, 2, or 3 big bullet points are. What do you want to do? What do you want to drive? Because the message has to be heard multiple times, like you said. I've heard 6 times. I don't know, maybe that number's too low. That the message that a customer has to see something, whether it's in print, whether it's in text, whether it's in email, whether it's in social media, they probably got to see it 5 or 6 times before they decide to make the switch. And that's where I think you can be really strong in marketing if you stay at it and stay focused on it.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. You got to know, like you said, you got to know what you're offering, what your offer
Yeah.
is. That's the start.
Yeah, and how to execute on once they're inside the building.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
Tom, I could talk to you about this stuff all day, but I do want to respect your time.
Okay,
For
great.
people who are interested in, your consulting services or want to get in touch with some questions, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
My email address, which I have my bowling center, or my personal email address is fine. It's my email address is tfunk99209@gmail.
Mhm.
Okay. And that's just the best way. Usually I answer most of the consulting. I use that email address.
Perfect.
Yeah. And once I get an email, then I just reach out and through an email and call the person. And that's usually through the consulting I do, whether usually it's market studies, but sometimes I'll do operations consulting. It's the same thing.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so, you can go to my websites, but that's just mostly bowling related, Highway
Right.
Lane and Chippewa Bowl. So,
Right.
but yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And I can vouch that, you do an excellent job, that we got connected through one of your clients and couldn't be happier.
I might have gotten lucky. No, I'm just kidding.
The dart.
Yeah. How do you know that?
Right.
So that was funny. He's a good guy.
No, that's awesome. Great. Well, yeah, thanks again so much for coming on, Tom. I've really enjoyed it. We'll have to do another one
Okay.
sometime.
Thank you, Forrest. It was
Yeah.
good.
All right. Take care.
Yeah.